Ghanaian President John Mahama faces an election test. A campaign to combat FGM in Mali. And cutting-edge tech and killer apps go head-to-head at the TechCrunch Disrupt Show in London. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening from Washington. I'm Haiti Adams-Fitzpatrick. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori is off today. Ghanaians head to the polls Wednesday to vote in the country's presidential and parliamentary elections. President John Mahama, who has been in office for 4 years, is asking for a second term. He faces his toughest challenge from Nana Akufo-Addo, who leads the New Patriotic Party. At the center of this election, the economy. Ghana is suffering amid high inflation, rising public debt, and frequent power cuts that have gone on for 3 years now. Akufo-Addo says his party can revive Ghana's economy. He's accusing the ruling National Democratic Congress of worsening the plight of Ghanaians. In his final push for re-election, President Mahama said Ghanaians have a simple choice to make: to stay the course and consolidate the gains he says the country has made over the last 4 years, or choose, as he put it, stifled growth and a new course. Well, VOA's Peter Clotty is in Ghana's capital of Accra and joins us on the phone right now. Peter, good evening. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, what is the mood there this evening?
Well, the mood is somber right now after both parties had their final campaign rally in Accra, respectively. The New Patriotic Party, the main opposition party, had theirs at the Trade Fair site 2 days ago, followed by the National Democratic Congress at the Accra Sports Stadium in Ghana. Both parties attracted a lot of their supporters that came all across the country because that was the final campaign ahead of the election. Today, by law, no party is expected or allowed to campaign. This is the time prospective voters are allowed to marinate over all these promises and campaign promises made over these months. So tomorrow they go to the polls to choose the new president and the new parliament.
Now, Peter, we know that the economy has, of course, been a focal point of this election. What is really at stake for Ghanaians this time round?
Well, what a lot of Ghanaians speak about is corruption or perception of corruption. Most Ghanaians agree that John Mahama has put in a lot of work when it comes to infrastructural development. However, the main opposition party, the New Patriotic Party, the PPP, the Progressive People's Party of Pakistan, accuse the government of inflating the prices of these infrastructural projects, and these monies go into their pocket. And that is why they accuse the MPs of mismanaging the economy and not putting in measures that will boost the economy, that will create jobs for the youth. And that is the frustration that their supporters have been expressing since I got here.
Peter, very, very briefly, what is President Mahama up against in Nana Akufo-Addo?
Well, he faces a stiff competition from Nana Akufo-Addo, who was a former foreign minister, Minister of Justice and Attorney General, and he is vying for the third time. For the past couple of years, any candidate that vies for the third time, they are sometimes lucky on the third try. So that is what Nana Akufo-Addo is hoping. But John Mahama said his work speaks out for him and he's going to be victorious.
Peter, thank you very much. VOA's Peter Clotty there, reporting from Accra, Ghana. Now, Ghanaians are hoping for free, fair and peaceful elections. About 8,000 observers will be stationed across the country. Peter Clotty again spoke to 3 of those election observers ahead of tomorrow's vote.
Okay, the training today is teaching us or discussing what we as election observers should do on the day of elections. So basically it's going to cover 3 aspects, i.e. the opening of the ballot box when it actually starts with the elections, and then the election itself, i.e. the voting itself, and then finally the counting, closing, exactly what processes we should do, what we should look out for.
We are monitoring women. We need more women to be in the capacity to do that job. So that's why majority of those being trained to be observers are women. Just a handful are men.
CODIO is a group made up of 42 organizations that have come together to observe elections domestically in this country. Our aim is actually to complement the efforts of the Electoral Commission to make sure we have transparency, integrity, and honesty to the process.
Moving to other news now, the United States says it is worried by the escalating violence in South Sudan. The State Department warns the situation in the Equatoria region could quickly spiral out of control. In a statement, the U.S. government says ethnically motivated hate speech, the targeting of civilians, and sexual violence is becoming widespread and can't be ignored. The statement called for the creation of a special court for South Sudan, and it's urging the international community to impose an arms embargo and targeted sanctions to help deter the violence. The U.S. is trying to secure the minimum number of votes needed for the UN Security Council to impose an arms embargo on South Sudan amid UN warnings of possible genocide. Well, the United Nations inquiry into allegations of sexual abuse and exploitation in the Central African Republic has identified 41 alleged perpetrators among the troops. The UN says it has interviewed 139 complainants who say they suffered at the hands of UN peacekeepers in 2014 and 2015. The troops were sent to Central African Republic 3 years ago amid violence between Muslim rebels and Christian militias. The UN probe has identified 25 peacekeepers from Burundi and 16 from Gabon. The allegations are the latest in a string of abuse claims made by women and children against the peacekeepers. The UN says it is now up to authorities in Gabon and Burundi to take action against the accused soldiers, all of whom left Central African Republic before the allegations surfaced. Libyan forces say they are securing the last few buildings where Islamic State militants have been making their final stand in Sirte. The forces, backed by U.S. airstrikes, appear to have gained control over the city's Giza Bahriyas district after most of the ISIS fighters there were killed or captured. Dozens of women and children, some of them migrants from sub-Saharan Africa who had been held captive by IS, have escaped or have been released in recent days, and that's allowed Libyan forces to move forward. Sirte has been Islamic State's most important base outside the Middle East. It was used to recruit large numbers of foreign fighters. Gambia has freed a top opposition politician and 18 others who were jailed under outgoing President Yahya Jammeh. This follows Adama Barrow's historic election victory last week. And as celebrations continue throughout the country, the president-elect has vowed to release more prisoners. He says he'll keep his campaign promise that Gambia will not withdraw from the International Criminal Court. VOA's Mariama Diallo reports.
The country will be in your hands in January.
This is a sight that Gambians never expected to see. Their leader of 22 years handing over power that he once vowed never to give up.
I wish you all the best, Mr. Barrow, okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And you have my full support. Let us make sure that you work towards maintaining peace and stability.
President Jammeh lost the election to a coalition of opposition parties led by Adama Barrow. The newly elected Barrow, who celebrated with supporters, said no one thought this day will ever come.
Everybody thought that it's impossible, but the impossible become possible.
The president-elect announced that the Gambia will not withdraw from the International Criminal Court, which is contrary to what Jammeh had wanted. He also pledged to release political prisoners.
Political prisoners should be released. All of them. If it is politics, you are released.
On Monday, an appeals court in the Gambia ordered the release on bail of a top opposition politician and 18 other protesters who had been arrested in April. In a statement released on Monday, Amnesty International welcomed the move as a positive step. but it warned against forgetting other prisoners of conscience who still languish in jail simply for having expressed their opinion or participated in peaceful protests. Celebration of Jammeh's defeat continue throughout the country, with most Gambians saying they are jubilant at the outcome.
I'm so happy for the Gambians because we don't have no war, we don't have no violence. The election go peaceful.
The United Nations Special Representative in West Africa urged Gambia to avoid any atmosphere of witch hunt and retribution.
I urge you to forge ahead in unity, conciliation, peace and harmony for the development of your great country known as the Smiling Coast of Africa.
Chambers also complimented Jammeh's gesture of gracefully accepting defeat, something he says is uncommon in Africa. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
Well, the president-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, is winnowing the list for the next Secretary of State. Experts say whoever he picks faces the challenge of restoring the credibility of American leadership abroad. They also expect a major foreign policy review on U.S. relations with other nations. State Department correspondent Nike Ching reports.
As the violence and humanitarian crisis in the Middle East is getting worse, and Russian and Chinese assertiveness continues to threaten America's national interest, the next Secretary of State will be facing many global challenges.
I think the Secretary of State needs to be global, needs to be concerned about all parts of the world. There are different challenges. Committed to American values, and that these are, to me, are universal values of good governance, anti-corruption, support for human rights. Recognizes that America is the leader in the world, that our engagement becomes critically important.
But the top U.S. diplomat also needs to deal with the demands from home.
The Secretary of State is always doing something at the direction of the President. So even by law and tradition, the Secretary is an agent of the President rather than an independent figure.
A major foreign policy review is expected. Some regional scholars recommend a different approach to address threats from a provocative North Korea.
It might be worth exploring some back-channel communications with the DPRK to see sort of where they are, where the temperature is, and what, at least to start a conversation. Because it's very hard to try and work on international relations problems with countries that you might be an adversary with if you have no relationship with them.
While President-elect Trump is pledging to put America first, analysts say the next Secretary of State needs to assure traditional allies of Washington's commitment on key issues. Nike Chin, VOA News, the State Department.
So we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover here. So you can join the conversation on Facebook. The address there is Africa 54. And please check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up in health news, gender-based violence under the spotlight in Mali. We'll be right back.
This is Green Beat for a healthier planet.
5 orangutans in East Borneo, Indonesia are tasting freedom for the first time, some for the first time ever, as part of a rehabilitation effort to reintroduce the critically endangered apes to the wild. They spent several years learning survival skills first with the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation. Jamartine Sahiti is CEO of the nonprofit group.
The orangutans we are going to release used to be kept by people as a pet. We looked for a place to release them that is very far away from people.
Each orangutan is sedated and then checked by a veterinarian before making the 24-hour journey to the remote forest location.
We bought concession rights to 86,000 hectares of this forest from the government for $1.5 million, but only about 20 to 25% of it is suitable as orangutan habitat.
The conservation group says the wild population of orangutans in Borneo have declined by as much as 2/3 since the 1970s. I'm Rebecca Ward for VOA's Green Beat.
Welcome back. Well, joining us now is Africa 54's health correspondent, Lenore Madu. Lenore, hello.
Well, from November 25th to the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women to December 10th, a Human Rights Day, the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign is a time to galvanize action to end violence against women and girls around the world. During the 16 days, countries around the world are taking various steps in solidarity of the campaign to ensure gender-based violence received awareness, support, and resources. In Mali, female genital mutilation or cutting, also called FGM, is on the agenda during the 16 days of activism. According to UNFPA, about 91% of women in Mali have undergone female genital cutting. Joining us via Skype from Bamako for more on addressing FGM in Mali is Josiane Yagibou, UNFPA representative in Mali. Ms. Yagibou, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Lenore.
So,
from Bamako.
Great. It's really nice to have you from Bamako. So during these 16 days of campaign, UNFPA in Mali is focusing on addressing FGM. Tell us about what is being done.
Well, Lenore, it's a great time to be in Mali. It's a great time because government is very engaged into the celebration of the 16 days for the 16 days of activism for the fight against gender-based violence. And in Mali, the government has engaged in several activities, namely the training of journalists around the country, which are now trained to speak with one voice around FGM and all forms of gender-based violence. We also have very important high-level advocacy activity going on this week with religious leaders to engage with the dialogue with religious leaders and with traditional leaders to understand the obstacles around FGM and why, up to now, Mali wasn't able to put together a law and to adapt a law for FGM and for violence against women. Religious leaders and traditional leaders, as you know, are a very important partner to achieve this goal of setting up this law. So their support and advocacy will help government pass this law. We're hoping in the next months, so that all forms of violence and all forms of violence against women are put through a legal system.
But when we understand that 91% of women in the country have undergone the practice, how do you even frame the message to convince, especially religious and traditional leaders, that this is something that needs to end? And what is the alternative?
Well, it's important that the message goes widely, nationally, to the whole country. And what we are also doing is using, as I said, the journalists to sort of translate the message, not only into words that are understandable, but also into national language. As you know, as you may have heard, Mali is one of the countries which still in West Africa hasn't been able to pass the law. As you said, 91% of women have undergone a female genital mutilation, and this practice is being abandoned by a lot of communities, but still a lot needs to be done. A lot more needs to be done, and that is why Mali is engaging this year at very high level, at the highest level in government, to undertake measures to end the fight against FGM.
Okay, Madame Yagibou, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for joining us from Bamako.
Thank you, Lenore.
And Josiane Yagibou is UNFPA representative in Mali. Now we turn to HIV. Just before this year's World AIDS Day last week, South Africa launched a multi-year trial of a vaccine that might save millions of lives and help put an end to AIDS. VOA's Carol Pearson reports expectations are high.
It's been a long, frustrating search for a vaccine against AIDS. And although there are a lot of hopes pinned onto a new vaccine trial that just began in South Africa, there are reasons why an HIV vaccine has been so elusive. Dr. Anthony Fauci at the U.S. National Institutes of Health has spent his career studying the AIDS virus. His agency is one of the funders of the trial.
The challenge that we have with an HIV vaccine that's much different from the challenges that we have with any other vaccine is that we've got to do better than natural infection.
With other viruses like polio or measles, the body begins to fight the infection on its own. To develop a vaccine, scientists find a way to mimic the virus so the body makes an immune response to protect itself. Not so with HIV. A few years ago, an HIV vaccine candidate was tried in Thailand. It cut the risk of getting HIV by 31%. Not good enough to produce a vaccine, but good enough for scientists to think they were onto something. The trial in South Africa uses a strengthened version of this vaccine. Earlier this year, a small study there showed that it was safe and promising enough to use in a major study. But that doesn't mean it will succeed.
The whole rationale for doing a trial is to see if it does work. We have no idea whether it will work or not.
More than 5,000 people will participate in the trial. Some will receive the potential vaccine, others a placebo. All will be counseled on how to avoid getting the HIV virus. The results won't be known for at least 3 years. But in order for this trial to be successful, the vaccine has to protect at least half of those who get it. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
That's our health report for today. So stay in touch for more. Find me on Twitter @Lenormudou. Back to you, Heidi.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Lenore. Be sure to watch Lenore Madu every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa right here on Africa 54. Life in a poor neighborhood of Bamako, Mali comes with plenty of hardship, even if you're able-bodied. 7-year-old amputee Adiaratu Sonogo faced her own set of additional challenges until a chance roadside encounter launched a life-changing sequence of events. VOA's Arzuma Kompayore explains in this report narrated by Marcus Harton.
Adiaratu lost her leg when she was hit by a motorcycle. After the accident, she learned to get around on crutches and nurtured a dream to someday ride a bicycle. To help support her family, she begged by the roadside. That's where she caught the attention of Issa Traore, a biomedical engineer who spends his spare time inventing things.
When I saw this little girl on 2 crutches, I don't know, it was too much.
Motivated by compassion, Traore launched a project, a new leg for Adiaratu. With her family's approval, Traore set to work. He used salvaged parts and materials. 3 weeks later, the new leg was done. He called it Exosapien 1. Total cost? Less than $330.
The fulcrum moves. The joint also flexes. As she grows up, the prosthesis can be adjusted to increase the length.
Adiaratu's reaction? No need for words. Her smile says it all.
To tell the truth, just the fact that she can go to school and other places, just that makes it a success.
Me? I like cars, dolls, and bikes.
Traore, the inventor, sees a mission beyond the joy he brought Adiaratu and her family.
There are quite a few people who need prosthetics who don't have the money to pay for them. That she's able to walk, I can only thank God.
For now, Adiaratu Sonogo is the new sensation in her neighborhood, and she now proudly travels the streets with her friends, ready to conquer the world. For reporter Arzuma Kompayore, this is Marcus Harton, VOA News, Washington.
Good people doing great things. It's time now for a short break. Still to come here on Africa 54. Tech companies do battle at a London trade show. Stay with us.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Ghana, presidential candidates make a final push before Wednesday's vote. In the Netherlands, former child soldier Dominic Ongwang pleads not guilty to crimes committed by the Lord's Resistance Army rebel group in northern Uganda. In South Sudan, the UN humanitarian coordinator Eugene Owusu calls for dialogue and healing after a visit to the town of Ye. In Nigeria, entrepreneur Kasope Ladipo has created a pepper mix that is convenient for busy Nigerians. Finally, in Sudan, a Japanese diplomat joins locals to take part in a Nubian wrestling contest in Khartoum. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending this Tuesday. We're taking you to TechCrunch Disrupt London. That's the annual tech conference where fledgling companies are competing for venture capitalists' attention in Startup Alley and Battlefield areas. Virtual reality is a hot tech trend right now, but high-cost headsets mean many are yet to sample premium VR content. Well, also drawing attention is a diagnostic smartphone app designed to diagnose diseases such as malaria and tuberculosis. Using the smartphone's camera and when connected to a microscope, the app uses digital imaging and artificial intelligence to analyze smear tests. Next up, lilac, silver and sparkle. If you want to be on trend this holiday season, this could be the look for you. The top styles for 2016 are out in force in the home decor shops of Beverly Hills. The over-the-top bedazzled look mixes neutral metallic tones and high shine to create a modern edge. Pearls, crystals and beads adorn table decorations and ornaments. This year's trendy color schemes involve mixing neutral shades with white, silver and champagne gold for a touch of frosty glamour. Well, I've got the silver down. And finally, American college student Mary Krupa has been interested in wild gray squirrels since her first week on campus. She says her student colleagues were in need of a little cheering up, and so she decided to share her shots of Sneezy the squirrel with them on Facebook. Sneezy was an overnight sensation, a squirrel supermodel attracting worldwide attention. But this hobby isn't for everyone. Krupa has been bitten twice, and animal experts don't recommend touching wild animals. And that is how Sneezy rolls. That's also what is trending today. And it is now time for us, of course, to roll on out of here. That is our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thank you so much for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
I'm Vincent Makori from Africa 54. This is VOA. Follow us on Africa 54. Go to facebook.com/VOA Africa 54.